Toxic people don't fear loud voices. They don't fear insults. They don't even fear confrontation. What they fear is someone they cannot control. If certain people suddenly feel uncomfortable around you, if manipulators avoid you, if narcissists lose interest in provoking you, it's not an accident. It's psychology. Today, I'll reveal 7 silent habits that make toxic people fear you without you raising your voice, without explaining yourself, and without becoming toxic yourself. Emotional self-control is the moment toxic people realize they can no longer reach you. Their influence has always depended on provoking reactions, creating emotional chaos, and pulling you into psychological games where they feel superior. When you stop reacting impulsively, their usual tactics begin to fail. They may criticize, mock, guilt-trip, or subtly disrespect you, expecting an emotional response that gives them leverage. But when your face remains calm, your tone steady, and your behavior unchanged, the power dynamic shifts quietly but completely. Toxic people are emotionally driven yet strategically observant. They study what triggers you, what upsets you, what makes you defensive or insecure. Every emotional reaction becomes data they store and later weaponize. Anger tells them where to push, hurt tells them where you are vulnerable, over-explaining tells them you doubt yourself, emotional self-control denies them this information, it creates uncertainty, and uncertainty makes manipulators uneasy. When they can no longer predict your reactions, they lose confidence in their ability to control the situation. Remaining emotionally regulated does not mean suppressing feelings or pretending not to care. It means choosing not to let your internal state be dictated by someone else's behavior. You still feel, but you don't leak those feelings into the environment where they can be exploited. This internal discipline communicates strength without words. It tells others that you are aware, grounded, and not easily shaken. Toxic individuals often mistake emotional intensity for weakness and calm composure for strength, because calm cannot be hijacked. When you control your emotions, conversations change, provocations fall flat, insults lose their impact, manipulative remarks hang awkwardly in the air with no reaction to feed on. The toxic person may escalate at first, becoming louder or more aggressive, hoping to break your composure. This is not strength on their part. It is desperation. They are testing whether the old access still exists. When it doesn't, frustration replaces confidence, and their behavior becomes increasingly exposed. Emotional self-control also protects your mental energy. Toxic dynamics are exhausting because they pull you into constant emotional regulation on behalf of someone else. When you stop reacting, you stop participating in that cycle. You conserve clarity, make better decisions, and respond instead of react. This clarity allows you to see situations objectively rather than emotionally, which further weakens manipulation. The calmer you remain, the more clearly you see patterns, intentions, and inconsistencies. Over time, this creates a quiet authority. People sense that you cannot be emotionally pushed, rushed, or baited. Your presence becomes grounded rather than reactive. Toxic individuals rely on emotional chaos to feel significant, and when chaos is removed, their influence fades. They may accuse you of being cold, distant, or changed, but what they are really experiencing is loss of control. Emotional self-control is not loud dominance. It is psychological independence that makes manipulation ineffective and emotional games unplayable. Silent boundaries are powerful because they do not invite negotiation. Toxic behavior survives on access, and access is maintained through arguments, explanations, emotional reactions, and repeated chances. When boundaries are loud, dramatic, or emotionally charged, toxic people see an opening. They hear uncertainty beneath the words and assume persistence will wear you down. Silent boundaries remove that opening entirely. They are not announced, justified, or defended. They are enforced through consistent behavior, and that consistency is what exposes toxic intent. A silent boundary is visible through action, not speech. It appears when you stop engaging in disrespectful conversations, when you no longer respond to manipulation, and when your availability changes without warning or explanation. Toxic people are skilled at twisting words, but actions give them nothing to manipulate. When your behavior changes and stays changed, they are forced to confront a reality they cannot argue with. This creates discomfort because it reveals that their influence is no longer effective. Toxic individuals often rely on confusion to maintain control. They push limits gradually, watching how much you tolerate, how often you forgive, and how many chances you give. Silent boundaries interrupt this process. The moment you stop tolerating subtle disrespect, emotional pressure, or repeated violations, the pattern becomes obvious. There is no emotional confrontation to distract from the behavior itself. The focus shifts from your reaction to their actions, and this exposure threatens the image they try to maintain. When boundaries are enforced quietly, toxic people often test harder. They may act confused, offended, or suddenly affectionate. These responses are not genuine. They are strategies to regain access. Silent boundaries reveal this clearly because your response remains the same regardless of their approach. You do not reward guilt, charm, anger, or apology with renewed access. Over time, this consistency strips their tactics of effectiveness and makes their behavior increasingly transparent. Silent boundaries also protect your self-respect. Explaining yourself repeatedly teaches others that your limits require approval. Silence communicates that your boundaries are not open for discussion. You do not need permission to protect your peace, and you do not owe clarity to those who have already shown disrespect. This shifts the power dynamic away from emotional persuasion and towards self-trust. Toxic people sense this shift immediately, even if they cannot articulate it. As silent boundaries take hold, toxic behavior becomes more visible not only to you but to others as well. Without emotional reactions to deflect attention, their manipulation stands exposed. They may label you as distant, changed, or uncooperative, but these labels are attempts to regain narrative control. The absence of emotional engagement leaves their accusations unsupported. Silence removes the stage they rely on, and without an audience or reaction, their behavior loses impact. Over time, silent boundaries create emotional distance without hostility. You are no longer pulled into cycles of explanation, defense, or repair. Your energy remains stable while theirs becomes restless. Toxic people fear this not because they are being attacked, but because they are being limited. The realization that they cannot cross your boundaries without consequences undermines the control they once assumed was permanent. Toxic people don't retreat because you become louder, harsher, or more aggressive. They retreat when they realize they no longer have access to your emotions, your energy, or your attention. Emotional self-control and silent boundaries work together to remove the fuel that toxic behavior depends on. When you stop reacting and start enforcing limits through action, manipulation has nowhere to land. There is nothing to argue with, nothing to twist, and nothing to exploit. This is not about winning power struggles or proving strength to anyone. It is about reclaiming ownership of your inner world. The more regulated your emotions become, the less influence others have over your decisions. The clearer your boundaries become, the harder it is for anyone to cross them unnoticed. Toxic people sense this shift immediately because it changes the dynamic without confrontation. They feel the loss of control long before you say a word. What makes this approach so effective is its simplicity. You do not need to explain yourself, expose your pain, or demand respect. Your behavior becomes the message. Calm replaces chaos. Consistency replaces confusion. Distance replaces damage. In that space, manipulation fades and self-respect grows. The fear toxic people feel is not of you as a person, but of the fact that you are no longer available to be used, controlled, or emotionally drained.